Welcome to Curious and Quirky, the podcast that unpacks innovation, pokes at conventional wisdom, and occasionally is stuffed with some really big ideas. So, this isn't your grandpa's podcast. Each month, we gather the bold and the brilliant and the slightly rebellious minds from Caltech Executive Education to explore what leaders and teams mostly get right and delicious lessons that come from when you don't. So grab your coffee or your pumpkin spice latte or whatever keeps you warm, and let's get curious and maybe a little bit quirky together. So, and by the way, it's Thanksgiving soon. So for any of you thinking, what's she talking about? So we have Brian Mattamore, and he is he's our idea guy. And if Thanksgiving dinner needed a chief idea officer, it would be him. He's the guy who can turn leftovers into three-course innovation strategy. He has that mind that can take a turkey, a to-do list, and a paperclip and somehow create a whole new business model. So what Brian is going to tell us today is the most surprising thing that AI is now really good at. Brian?
Oh gosh, well, thank you, Marian. I love that intro. It actually relates to a little bit to what I'm going to talk about. This started with something curious, and it's definitely gotten quirky. I hope you'll allow me that. What AI is really surprisingly good at is actually writing comedy. I couldn't believe it because when AI first came out like 3 years ago, I was one of the first ones to do an AI assisted book. And my book was called Quirks, and I had quirks of famous people. These were accurate. They were not hallucinations. So, Abraham Lincoln was indeed a trash talking wrestler as a young man. And I said, well, write a story about that and write an ad for an event he might be in and write a poem about that. And I also said, well, write some jokes about him being a trash talking wrestler. And oh my gosh, the jokes were terrible. They were awful. I had to go through sometimes several hundred, 300, 400 to get even one joke I might use. And the one I put in the book, I mean, what did Lincoln do when his opponent didn't break back down? He gave them the Lincoln Logger body slam. Okay, I'm not really laughing here, right? So they call that a joke. So I had kind of given up. And then more recently, because I've been experimenting with AI and its competencies and capabilities, I suddenly got the idea because I had done a book on quotes and adopting the role of, famous people living and dead. And I said, boy, I wonder if AI could assist in writing comedy by adopting the mindsets of famous comedians, living or dead. And I was blown away and surprised that the stuff was actually pretty good. And so I wanted to demonstrate that for you guys. And so I picked Jerry Seinfeld, Louis Black, George Carlin, Robin Williams, and Jon Stewart to write comedy routines around, drum roll, the Curious and Quirky podcast, right? So I did that and got a whole bunch of stuff. And by the way, when you do this work, it's really important to put in specifics in the prompts. And you'll see, I'm gonna share one of the scripts here. But so I went through and I said, yeah, this is a good line from George Carlin. That's a good line from Jon Stewart. And I'm spending all this time, and I said, well, wait a second. Why don't I have AI put all these routines together and pick what AI thinks are the best one and do one that's a conglomeration of these routines? So here we go. And now I've cut this down. I probably should cut it down even further, but here we go. I'll read part of the script of what it created. So welcome to the Curious and Quirky podcast, the only show where 6 Caltech instructors talk for 5 minutes each and somehow solve global supply chains, leadership trauma, HR chaos, B2B marketing, creativity, and artificial intelligence before the hour is up. It's TED Talks, if TED Talks had the metabolism of a hummingbird. All right, so here we go. First up, Alan Dunn, the supply chain genius. Guy talks about logistics like it's the hidden plumbing of the universe. He'll say things like, the tension in the East African manufacturing corridor is creating systemic ripple delays in the North American consumer goods channel. And I'm thinking, buddy, I just want to know what my toaster is going to show up, right? He's explaining the entire geopolitical balance of the world. And by the end of it, you're terrified that buying paper towels is an act of international espionage. Okay. So that was Alan. Now we got Tim Boyd. Tim isn't here today, but he's normally our MC and he's a leadership guru. Then we get Tim Boyd, Mr. Positive Leadership. Tim speaks so gently, so calmly. It feels like he's holding a tiny therapy session in your earbuds. Tim says, people perform better when they feel valued. Really, Tim? Next, you'll tell me my puppies enjoy snacks. But he's right. And he says it with this soothing tone, like he's guiding your soul through customs. He could deliver launch codes like, okay, everyone, let's stay positive. Push the button mindfully. Feel valued as you do it. Okay, so that's Tim. Now we're on to Ginny. I should apologize to Ginny here. I'll go interrupt this because this was the Lewis Black routine. So, bam, Jenny shows up. HR, organizational development. A woman who can say the phrase psychological safety, and suddenly three CEOs wake up sweating. Ginny doesn't discuss culture, she interrogates it. If your organization doesn't support change, it will not change, says Ginny. And sometimes a manager just felt a sharp, unexplained pain in their chest. Ginny's the kind of HR person who walks into a room and the office plants file formal complaints. So that's Lewis Black. You would expect that. And then finally, well, there's me too, but Mary Abazia and Tom Sutal, the B2B marketing duo, they talk about customers like they're narrating a Discovery Channel special. This was from Robin Williams pretending he's Richard Attenborough. Observe the mid-market buyer. See how it flees when confronted with irrelevant messaging. Somehow throw a value proposition at it. Mary and Tom make segmentation sound like wildlife tracking. I'm waiting for one of them to pull out a tranquilizer gun and yell, "We've tagged the CIO, release him into his natural environment." I swear they're chasing B2B buyers through the savannah with segmentation charts. Okay. And then finally, me, I'll abbreviate me. They call me the innovation tornado. He treats AI like a hyperactive toddler magician. Show me something silly. And AI is like, here's a business model shaped like an octopus. Does Brian question this? No. He goes, great, let's run with it. Brian's the only person who could get on Shark Tank and say, our product is a self-driving stapler that generates customer insights. And the sharks would go, I'm in. So that's it. This is the Curious and Quirky podcast, the only place where supply chains, leadership psychology, HR culture, B2B marketing, AI-powered creativity all collide in a glorious, brilliant, hilarious mess. It's curious, it's quirky, it's Caltech. It's the only show, and I love this line, it's the only show where six incredibly smart people make you feel smarter and dumber at the same time. That's progress, folks. Okay, so there we go. I did that for the holidays. If anybody has to give a talk to the Christmas party or whatever, you could do this. And the point here is that you want to do this iteratively. The first rounds won't be so good. You say, change this joke. And then as you go through it, if you don't like it, you say, well, let's bring in Jim Gaffigan or Lenny Bruce or Chris Rock or Ellen DeGeneres, and let's get their ideas. And if you work hard enough at it, I think you can probably get a pretty good routine. So that's it, guys. Jenny, I hope you're not offended, but Jenny is up. She's our HROD expert, as was implied by the routine I did. Jenny, you're up.
I just feel like we went through a curious and quirky roast, you know?
Right.
I've got to pause a little. You know, the transition's going to be a little challenging here, Brian. So we are at the time of the year, the end of the year, where there are a lot of predictions about the next year. So in the spirit of that, I'd like to talk about Korn Ferry's survey and the work they've done predicting the talent trends for 2026. And what was interesting to me and curious was what they entitled the study. The study is entitled Human AI power couple. So we're now seeing not only the linkage between the human and AI, but now we're talking about potentially moving into more of a partnership, which is very different than the way AI has been discussed in the workplace previously. So the report cites the 2026 talent landscape, and certainly, as AI progresses, the landscape is changing even more year to year. AI is a piece of the puzzle, but the four major themes that the report sites are these: that the leadership pipeline is under threat as the companies are cutting entry-level positions. So there's a kind of a short-term mindset out there. Executives are chasing AI certified hires, of course, but talent leaders are saying critical thinking, the critical thinking humans can do, matters most for driving change. And yes, change, Brian. Talent leaders, they're gaining top influence. They're gaining more influence at the C-suite table. The leadership is listening to these talent acquisition leaders more because they're talking about the considerations around all that's changing. And of course, our dear friend, the workplace flexibility policy, our hybrid workers, that of course is significantly impacting recruiting. So many of these changes that are cited as a future trend of 2026, we've been talking about these already. The workforce is in transition. It's in transition because of hybrid workers. It's in transition now because of AI. The good news is, as it relates to AI, the human side of things is now entering the conversation more. There's a recognition that you need both. If you're going to have AI, you still need humans. So if we go deeper into this theme of cutting entry-level roles, what we do find now is a new type of colleague. And this is the autonomous AI agent. It's no longer a matter of who is getting hired. It's now a matter of what is getting hired. Do we go with the human or do we go with the machine? So the study finds, as it relates to talent leaders, more than half of these talent leaders that were surveyed in this study are planning to add these AI agents to their teams in 2026. So what are these AI agents? They're not chatbots. They are AI agents who work independently, make decisions, complete tasks without human prompting. They have their own digital identities, their own profiles, their own permissions and responsibilities. And these agents have a favorable price tag. So the decision becomes whether to hire a $100,000 human or deploy a $20,000 AI agent for the same role. So the risk becomes, with so much focus on cost cutting, perhaps the decision will go more toward the $20,000 AI agent. But we've got to remember the workforce is not that simple, and the workforce is not one-dimensional. So these key questions need to be considered. How do managers lead and manage a mixed team of humans and AI agents? How will these tasks get coordinated between humans and AI? How are workflows designed so that humans and agents can work together? Managers have challenges managing humans. Managing AI agents introduces the need for an additional skill set. So another consideration is the impact on the future talent pipeline. Those entry level and operational roles that are getting eliminated, that's where the future managers and leaders come from. The cost savings of AI agents in the short term will create a talent shortage in the long term as people progress. An AI agent will not be promoted to team lead, then to mid-level manager, then to VP, and so on. So where is the future leadership of the company coming from? So we're in a bit of an uncharted territory. But we have to remember um, the the building blocks of a successful workforce and organization as we go through this transition. The leadership imperatives that we struggle to get right today will only become more challenging as AI takes hold. So I'm going to talk about two of those. The first imperative is culture. With AI agents added to the mix of hybrid workers, the company culture becomes even more of a challenge. What does the workplace look like? How does the workforce behave? How does the work get done? How do employees work with each other? So these questions really need to be addressed. And the second leadership imperative is change leadership. CEOs are pouring billions of dollars into AI and are still uncertain about the financial returns. And the Korn Ferry study cites that talent acquisition leaders that were surveyed in this study, of those surveyed, only 11% felt their executives are well prepared to lead through an AI transition. So AI is a significant transition that requires employees' acceptance to be successful. And like with all major change, a leader needs to articulate the benefits of AI, help employees understand how it impacts them, manage the uncertainty that's coming their way, and communicate frequently and consistently. It's the same change framework for any major transition. We've got to apply it to AI. So AI is here, and we need to do what only humans can do. We need those humans to manage the workforce, both humans and machines, redefine roles and responsibilities, fill the pipeline of future talent, and problem solve with critical thinking skills. So yes, we've been expecting AI. We've been paying a lot for its arrival. It's knocking at the door, and we're letting it in. So the question is, how ready are we for AI to take up permanent residence? So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alan Dunn, our supply chain guru, and all those other things that Brian described.
And he knows where the toaster is. Good. Okay.
Oh, that's right. He knows where the toaster is and the paper towels.
And my plants don't hate me.
Well, ouch, Alan.
Well, thank you, Jenny. I always enjoy listening to you, Jenny, and you always kind of feed right into what I want to talk about too. I mean, it sounds like it's AI all the time here, but AI has really become really important to all of us. Not since Tim Berners-Lee at CERN invented the World Wide Web in 1989 has there been an underlying innovation that so enormously shapes four factors, that would be society, culture, industry, and individual behaviors, the way that AI is and will shaping. Witness the fact that we now are talking about AI agents. Think about this, Jenny. You make a living teaching people how to be better leaders, how to be better change agents. And there's no lack of work in trying to figure out how to change and how to improve leaders. Now leaders have to learn how to manage and how to lead those that don't have any ambition. That would be an AI agent. That's probably one of the biggest benefits of an AI agent, is that it essentially lacks ambition. It's got all the skills, all the capabilities. It's not interested necessarily in being promoted. If it does, then we have a whole other set of issues to talk about. So the AI revolution, and I'm going to talk about this in terms of supply chain in a second, is not an incremental revolution. It's a true societal level initiator. I always say that AI belongs on the periodic table of society altering innovations. And I want you to think about that. AI is a tool in our toolbox that doesn't replace people, but it helps to amplify. It should help to amplify the performance of those who use it correctly. Now, in the supply chain world, there's the enabling technologies, of course, that we see going forward are AI, machine learning, and of course the large language models. We see those as effectively enabling a better convergence of computational power, communication, speed, and simulation capabilities. What I'm saying is that AI, the real term when we talk about AI, should not be about AI. It should be what I call augmented AI. Augmented AI is highly skilled people with enormous critical thinking skills and problem solving skills who live on mental models, and they build mental models all the time, and they know how to use those to use the AI tools that are put in front of them. So AI is effectively the software, the tool, and the person using the AI is the augmenter, if you will. So augmentation skills are similar. And by the way, there's nothing new about this. So I go back to the history in production and manufacturing, where we moved from brilliant machinists doing machining work on metal components and items to the world of computer numerically controlled machines, CNC machines. And so all of a sudden, the machinist had to understand something about how a computer-controlled machine works. They had to understand about trigonometry and geometry of path movement and things like that for the tools. And they made that transition. They had to make that transition because nothing was more precise, nothing was better than a CNC type of machine. So the operator effectively worked to amplify the power of that technology in manufacturing. So we have in the supply chain world, we have a rich history of using these advanced tools to amplify the performance of somebody with deep, deep knowledge, deep skills, and really understand the logic behind what they're doing. If I think about where this is going to go. And if I look at the work from Gardner and I look at the work from Association of Supply Chain Management and Council of Supply Chain Professionals Association, I look at the work that they've done, and it's clear that there's about 6 different areas in supply chain that are going to be using these AI tools and a lot of other tools. So the first one is autonomous planning systems. And so this is largely going to be focused initially on procurement, but also on plant loading. In other words, figuring out the schedules. Look, everybody who's a supply chain professional will tell you this. Every single person, every supply chain leader will tell you this. Before they go to bed on Sunday night, they have a plan of what the next week is going to look like in their factories and their distribution systems and their logistics and their trucking and their transportation. They have a plan. By 10 a.m. Monday morning, that plan is shot. Something happened, a truck overturned on a highway, a machine broke down, there was a blackout, energy blackout in one of their factories. Something happened that had the ripple effect that changed everything. If you think about the permutations, if you have a product that has 1,000 components to it and there's multiple levels in the bill of materials, and you're buying the purchase componentry from 300 different suppliers in 11 different countries, any one of those is late can cause everything to be late. Or build inventory, which is, as we like to say in supply chain management, inventory is the giant sucking sound of capital. It's what a dollar in inventory is a dollar not available for R&D. And so what happens is that things go wrong. Well, the idea of AI and having an AI agent that can quickly see this and can replan before anybody shows up at the office on Monday morning makes an enormous amount of sense. It's a great idea if it's done properly. So this autonomous planning in both procurement and the procurement network, and then also the plant loading of how you move things around in the factory is going to change society, culture, industry, and individual behaviors. The third one is what we refer to as autonomous scheduling and rescheduling. So it's closely aligned to what I just talked about. And this is about having one's ERP systems or enterprise resource planning systems, which every manufacturing and distribution company has, how those will completely replan from top to bottom and contact suppliers automatically again before anybody shows up in the morning. Then we also have warehousing. Warehousing is because of the distribution nature of the world. If you fly over America now, North America for sure, you see more big distribution centers than you do manufacturing facilities. I always am amazed when I fly over Southern California, when I take off out of one of the airports in Southern California, and it's just miles and miles and miles of these million square foot or larger distribution facilities. And so distribution has a lot of receiving. Material has to come in bulk, and then it has to be put into racks, and then it has to be retrieved from the racks, but not in bulk, in individual or smaller lot sizes. And then it has to be put together, put on a pallet, or put in a container to then be shipped out. Well, this these functions are probably the place where automation has the greatest opportunity. What we refer to in warehousing, we don't in manufacturing, we don't really refer to it as automation anymore. We refer to it as automation. Automation is where you have the autonomous nature of the equipment that's automated. And so autonomous means it can make decisions again through using AI and AI agents. It can use those. And some of this is happening already. I have two clients that the factory people come to work every day and they set up the machines and then they go home. On the way out the door, they turn off the lights, and all the rest of the day and night, the machines produce product. They come back in the morning, they offload all the offload tables and the offload pallets and move those to the warehouse, and then they reset up and then they go home and they do that. And so most of the conversion of raw material into work in process into finished goods happens autonomously and automatically. And so the same thing is going to happen in the factory. Indeed, or in the warehouse, excuse me. Indeed, there are now warehouse robots, bipeds, they're actually bi-roller peds, so they're usually on wheels, that can pick cases of parts or cases of material, cases of product off of a pallet in a warehouse and move it to another pallet and then go on and then constantly organize based on where the material is at in the racks, and at the same time not bump into one another. And they can do that at a speed that's 2.5 times greater than the average what we call warehouse picker. And so that's where we're going to see the short term. In fact, in 5 years from now, less than 5 years from now, the technology is growing so fast as a result of that convergence of computational power, AI agents, communication speed, and simulation capabilities, that within 5 years, you'll see very few pickers in the largest warehouses. Amazon has already invested $600 million in this. There's probably more coming from them. And then Wayfair has just announced a $375 million investment in these kinds of tools. So none of these are small investments. Then there's the autonomous material handling. You can go on the internet and you can see all kinds of robotic moving devices that move material from one part of the factory or warehouse to another part. If I go back 10 years ago, these were $15,000 to $20,000 a robot. They're $3,500 today, probably be $2,500 by the time we get to Christmas of 2026. And so now back to Jenny's and Brian's point, it's actually easier to hire these agents that have this automation attached to them than to hire people, because again, these agents are just interested in getting the job done. They, to me, one of the most fascinating aspects, and I mentioned it earlier, is that they are highly efficient, they are highly productive, and they lack ambition. And that's important because that takes them out of all the political issues, that takes them out of all of the issues that sometimes sidetrack people at work. By the way, those vehicles that I just talked about in the warehouse, we call those AGVs. That stands for automated guided vehicles. They do it through a combination of different technologies, everything from LiDAR to GPS, etc. And then we have the autonomous transport. This is one of the areas that I find most interesting, and that is the ability of trucks to drive themselves. Now, there's huge issues with this from a safety. It's just like the idea of flying an airplane. A Boeing 777 can take off, fly, and land all by itself. You do not need a pilot. You do not need a pilot until you do. And so the same thing with a truck. When you have 80,000 pounds going down the highway at 70 miles an hour, or in Texas, 85 miles an hour, and we've seen from recent news stories, this can be dangerous even with skilled people. And so now all of a sudden we have this. However, there's some hybrids in there. So one is the caravanning, where you have a truck in the front driven by a driver, and then the 5 trucks that are following it are all connected. They're all interfaced to that truck. And so where that truck goes, they go. So that's an interesting idea. It's being tested. In fact, there's lots of those caravans running across the continent of Australia right now. And so the trucking is interesting. The one that'll probably get the fastest on the autonomous vehicle side will be drones, delivery drones. Delivery drones have regulatory issues, but very few safety issues. I do remember years ago we tested a drone down in Mexico, and it was delivering from one side of Tijuana to another side of Tijuana. Actually, flew out of the supplier's factory, from the middle of the factory all the way, found its way out, and then flew across Tijuana, and then came and went into my client's factory and went all the way to the work center and dropped the circuit boards right there for the person. Then it flew back, except the military thought it was handling drugs, so the Mexican military shot it out of the sky. And so we actually watched the video of it spiraling to the ground. And I thought, okay, well, we never kind of thought about that. That was one of those things, Brian, had, from an innovative perspective, sometimes there's things you forget to think about. And this was one of them that somebody could shoot our drone out of the sky. And as like one guy said, well, at least he shot it after the delivery. So that's just optimism for sure. Anyways, that's what I wanted to share with you. The future is here. We're not going to put this whole AI, and particularly the agentic AI, we're not going to put it back in the bag. It is going to change society, culture, industry, and behaviors probably more than anything. That does not mean people are going to be out of work. There's going to be transitions. What it does mean is that the people that stay in work, that manage and lead these agents, now have a whole different leadership responsibility. Think about this. When, Jenny, were you ever asked to teach people how to lead people who have no ambition? Think about that. But you still have to lead them. And with that, I'd like to turn it over.
Yeah, and Alan, I was going to say the drone also didn't stop at a bar to get a drink, right? So, besides no ambition, there's no drug use or drinking heavily, right?
I'm channeling you a bit. I'm thinking now I need to get a drone to go get the drink for me. Thank you. Thank you for triggering that in me. With that, let's turn it over to Mary. Mary, take it away.
Oh, I love the idea of an augmenter. The job description for that is coming up. And thank you. I always learn a lot from you, Alan. I'm like, oh man, there's a lot going on in the world. Well, I'm going to talk about Disney. It's one of our shining examples when we work with organizations on their strategy. Because Disney just is remarkable. They continue to add value in ways that people are willing to pay a lot of money for. If you think back, how much did you pay when you went to the Magic Kingdom for those magic memories for your family? Probably a lot. So how does Disney do this? How do they continue to thrive? And what can we learn as business leaders about what they're doing? So I looked into it more, and Disney is doing what great companies do. They're strategically and ruthlessly prioritizing their whole portfolio. And then they decide where the future value is going to be, and they reallocate their capital towards things that are creating growth. They question things, and then the most important thing that they do is they say, we're going to stop doing this, which is really hard. For example, they are doubling down on experiences. They are expanding theme parks still. They're adding more cruise ships and resorts. And that portion of their business is generating like $34 billion with $9 billion in profits. So it's big. Their streaming business that they had invested in, part of the portfolio, it's improving, but it still needs to be more consistent in terms of its profitability and staying relevant and differentiated. The legacy assets that they have, like they have a flagship broadcast that we all grew up on, ABC. It's actually declining. It's really tough because of some of the shrinking ad budgets that are there and really heavy regulations. So some of the analysts are saying to Disney that they should just consider shutting ABC down, which would not be, considered a generation ago. I was curious then how they're using AI in their process. So what I found was that Disney has built one of the richest data ecosystems in the world. and especially with the higher income families. So every time, the magic band gets scanned or an app gets clicked, they gain insights as to what is important to their guests and how much they're willing to pay for even convenience. And they're turning this data into really personalized experiences and managing everything, including pricing, dynamic pricing. And then they are using this to shape their future and make those decisions. Like the franchise that they've expanded recently is Cars. And I'm sorry to say that they have eliminated finally the Tom Sawyer Island that we obviously had been going to for many years, but in July they shut it down. And then AI, they have a new office called the Office of Technology Enablement. So they've dedicated resources, even though they have technology everywhere, they're calling out the enablement part of it. And they're deploying AI pretty much across everything. They're personalizing ESPN. They're testing very interactive AI tools on Disney Plus, exploring robotics and really immersive guest experiences in its parks. So they're not using AI to, replace their magic. They're using it to really scale it in new ways. So what as strategic leaders can we learn from Disney is the biggest thing is hopefully your team is conducting these types of portfolio reviews. And a lot of our clients, they do that annually, but the industries, they change so fast that it's really smart to check in even quarterly to make sure that things haven't shifted too much. And in these meetings, it is really important to remember that this portfolio rationalization isn't just a financial exercise. It is very strategic. So that means that you should really have a lot of the functions of your company involved. Pretty much, we'd like to say anyone that can mess up your plans later needs to be in the room to do that discussion and make sure that everyone's aligned with it. When you're in the meeting, there's three key things. So how can we focus ruthlessly on the future? How can we explore protecting the engines of growth and profit, but make sure that we don't get stuck in the past and just stay with things because we've always done it that way. Many companies are using our tools like our prioritizer to look at future success and the ability to win, and that starts to help shake things out a bit. The second big question is how can we treat data as a very strategic asset? As we just discussed, smart companies are using it to pinpoint what truly matters to customers. And for example, AI is allowing us now to simulate where the revenue and the profit is going to come from as companies do different value propositions. So you really can do a lot with this now, especially with AI. And then the third big question is how can you leverage technology like AI with discipline? And the discipline is a key word there. So Disney created that department that I had mentioned. So it might be worth you considering seeing if you can have some version of that in your company. So Disney is reminding us that saying no strategically is often the only way that we can then say yes to the really important things that come next. So with that, I'm going to open up the floor and I'm going to ask Ginny the first question. Ginny, you were talking about these AI agents, and I'm really curious how they're getting into, like a lot of companies have IT czars, and they don't allow any foreign software or things to come into the organization. So is there any thoughts or any of you guys that, Alan, I know you think about this a lot too, how are companies actually even bringing those AI agents into the firewalls and feeling comfortable with that?
I'm gonna hand that one over to Alan. Yes.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I just had a discussion with a couple of IT executives, and they both admitted to me that they haven't really thought much about that. That they're kind of feeling their way out because they don't really understand. So it's good. It's starting in the financial services industry where the AI agents are growing pretty rapidly, and the problem is the security of those agents and the access to those agents. And so right now, those agents typically are sitting on separate servers, um, and they're constrained by all kinds of VPNs and other sort of encrypted pipelines or links. But they're not sure that they're actually they're actually controlling and managing them from a cybersecurity perspective.
Mm.
So this is one of those things where as one of the executives said to me, he goes, it's so new that we don't have a whole lot of idea. Plus, we don't have the ability to evaluate the code, the firmware itself, to know if there's anything nefarious in there or anything that can be an error. One of the things that they all have said to me is that all the AI companies have firmware updates so frequently that everybody, almost nobody, can keep up with them. And the amount of firmware updates that have to be rolled back in the agentic side of AI is pretty high at this point in time. So that means that the software companies that are providing these also are struggling. So I think that like everything else, they'll solve this one real quick. Um, uh, I was talking with a gentleman at one of the large insurance companies that does loss of income type of insurance, business interruption insurance, and this is their number one issue. Number one
Mhm.
issue on the cybersecurity side is the cybersecurity of agentic AI applications. So,
And,
yep.
Mary, if I could, I wanted to comment on your data as an asset comment, and obviously that'll lead to opportunities where you get the amplification of human thinking and AI to look at this data and say, what do we got? And you've got the individuals who are creative enough to recognize it. But I think one of the ramifications and implications of that for innovation is that innovation could be speeded up dramatically because now those people internally are, innovation is often as much political as anything, right? And if you have the science and the data and the analytics to help you sell an idea to management, you are going to be more likely to sell that idea. So I think if you look at all the things you said and all the categories, data innovation could be a tremendous shift in the world for the CIO, and we'll find that they're probably going to be focusing on that maybe more than anything else because they can they can sell the internal story about why it makes sense with science and numbers.
Yeah, I
Such a
mean,
good point,
it brings
Ryan.
to mind, getting customer insights. This is a whole new way of getting those insights.
Right.
And, in the past, you'd have, a sample size of this, and, you try to kind of pull out the insight statistically from that. But this is really exciting, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's so much in the ability to use these tools to really understand and to profile your customers and to
Yeah,
really understand um, not just through their responses to surveys or even buying
right.
behavior, but the other things that they look at. So in other words, there's a lot of disparate information that helps you to build a better profile of these customers and predict their buying behaviors, kind of the psychographics of how they go about making decisions, which is you
Hmm.
think about that, if you could break that code of how does a consumer go about it on an individual basis, not the monolithic consumer, but on an individual basis, how they go about making a decision, then you have the ability to target them in very unique and individualized and personalized ways.
And
In a sense, this ability has what it's done, and Brian, from your perspective, this is going to shift and create I think, an amazing amount of innovation. One colleague said to me that this is the equivalent in the data world is what Judge Green did when he broke up AT&T, when he broke up Ma Bell. That
yeah.
changed our lives forever, didn't it? I mean, after that, that's the phone that was on your desk looked the same as the phone that was on your father's desk and probably your grandfather's desk. And when they broke up all AT&T, and all of a sudden we now had cell phones and everything else. And I think anybody who looks at the history of innovation knows that when you when you kind of allow the localization of technology and you allow people to develop it unencumbered, it just kind of explodes. And good ideas will make it, and bad ideas won't.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, Alan. I loved what you said that, the way we think of innovation in sort of two categories. One is efficiency, internal productivity innovation, right?
Right.
And not that those are obvious, but the scientists and data guys are good at that. And I think the real creative challenge is how you use this data for growth, and for newness and new strategies. And so, and I think there'll be experts in each of those separate categories within the world of innovation.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So, it's an exciting. I oftentimes, like I said, I've told you before, I wake up every morning trying to figure out how to be the 70-year-old millennial or Gen Zer. And I kind of wish I was 40, because I think the next 30 years are going to be the equivalent of going from horse and buggies to a mobile society. I think
Well,
that,
hopefully the science will let you live longer, Alan. So that's
yeah,
what we're
I'm hoping. I'm
It
hoping.
would be, I would love to come back. I would, it's this movie called Demolition Man, and he gets frozen for 100 years and comes back. And I mean, I'm with you, but I would really like to see what the world's going to be like in 50 or 100 years.
Yeah, right, right. Oh,
So, unless there's anything else, I'm going to go ahead and close us out. So, um, I'm gonna get a little bit cheeky here, but say that's a wrap on this feast of curiosity for this month's session. We hope you are filled your plate with fresh ideas, savory insights, and maybe a few unexpected leftovers worth reheating later. And a huge helping of gratitude to our incredible instructors from the Caltech Executive Ed. If you are feeling stuffed with inspiration, subscribe and come back next month for another thought-provoking conversation. And until then, stay grateful, stay curious, and remember, great ideas like pumpkin pie are even better when you share them. So thank you, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving or whatever holiday you're celebrating soon.
happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you, Mary. That was great.
Thank you, Mary.
Bye-bye.
Bye.